Talk. So welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for our inaugural Pride Talk. This is the very first event of this kind that we've hosted as the BCS Pride group. So we hope you enjoy. We're looking forward to your feedback afterwards. So today's speaker is Matteo Tabaro, and he'll be taking over from me in just a minute. But before that, I'm going to give a quick intro to BCS and BCS Pride for anyone who hasn't heard of them before. So BCS, they are a member-led organisation with over 60,000 members in 150 countries. I've been a part of BCS for about a year and a half now. I am the Education Liaison Officer with the BCS Pride Group. BCS is very excited about changing the future of tech and making sure it is a good place to be, as inclusive as possible, and that's led by the members within the community. Within BCS, we also have community-led groups, and BCS Pride is one of those groups. So we're a fairly new member committee, and our goals include increasing the visibility of LGBTQIA+ members within BCS, and to work within the membership to develop its understanding of LGBTQIA+ and other diversity in the sector. Now, any BCS member can get involved. So if you are thinking about joining BCS, we can have a look at that later on, and we'd love to have you as part of the group. But on to why we are here today. So Matteo is our presenter today. He is a third-year PhD student at Imperial College London. His PhD is in mathematics, and tech is a much wider world now than it ever used to be, and mathematics has its influences on tech as well. He also enjoys cooking and art, and now I'm going to hand over to Matteo.
Thank you, Maddie. Okay, let's try share my slides. That should be working now. It's all good. Yep. Okay. So thank you. First of all, thank you for having me talking at this fantastic event as the first speaker of the series. So first of all, please, there is a month worth of speakers coming up, so please do participate. I'll remind you at the end of this as well. But there are more talks that I think like all of you should just be part of and look at, because you've got some amazing speakers coming up. So thank you, BCS, for the opportunity. And yeah, so today I will just give a brief presentation of what it's like to do a PhD in mathematics, and how has my identity contributed and played a role in my career, and especially my choices in developing my career. So yeah, let's start with who I am. So as Maddie introduced me, I'm Matteo. I'm a third-year PhD student in mathematics. My pronouns are he, him, and I was born in Italy. On the right, you can see a very small map of all the places that I've been living in before moving to London. And you will see that places to live in will be one of the main things that I'll be talking about during this talk, because I have a lot of opinions about, and I think it's a very important topic, especially for queer people and people who identify in different ways. So I moved in 2015, I moved to London in the UK to study mathematics at Imperial College. That's where I did my NSci, so I graduated in 2019, mathematics. And yeah, I've been living in London for basically 7 years now, and I love it, and I really like the UK, which as an Italian might sound weird, but some reason I enjoy it. So yeah, I really want to stay, and I really like my life here. And yeah, so I love mathematics. That's one of the main reasons why I'm doing a PhD, but I also do have a life outside of my job, and that involves a lot of cooking, because again, I'm Italian, so you know, you have to survive in the UK, so sometimes you need to cook for yourself just to remind yourself of home. And then history of art and Yeah, which is a great passion of mine. But yeah, so what do I do in in my daily life, most of my days at least? So I'm a third year, going actually my fourth year in a couple of months, PhD student at Imperial College in mathematics. My specific field is dynamical systems, which is basically the study of chaotic systems and trying to understand how systems like that settle and what does it mean to settle. Do they settle? Like, there's a lot of questions about chaos and what chaos means. I'm not going to be focusing about my research there because I don't think it's the point. So if anyone is interested, please do get in contact, because I do love talking about maths and I really, really want to get people excited about it. So if anyone is interested in even just vaguely understanding what I do, I'd be more than happy to talk to them. Yeah, so as a researcher, my life is basically divided in three main areas, which are research, teaching, and attending conferences and work events around the world. So I will talk about these a bit later, but just keep these in mind for now. So the first thing that I want to talk about is how do you get to a PhD? What do you need to, well, not what do you need, but like, what did I do to get a PhD, to get into a PhD program to begin with? So the first point, which I think is very focal, is that everyone's journey is different. You can talk to a lot of people and everyone's going to tell you their stories, and probably there are no two stories that are identical. Everyone has gone through different variations of these applications processes, and everyone has made some choices that have determined where they are now. So with this in mind, the main focus of this talk is talk to people. Talking to people is the only way you have to really get a gist of how things are. And that is of fundamental importance to make decisions, especially important decisions, such as committing the next 3 to 5 years to studying a specific subject in a very technical and deep detail. So with this in mind, how did I get to do a PhD? Why did I choose to do a PhD? Well, I kind of always wanted to do it. It's one of the reasons why I studied maths, was like I was interested in it. And from the very beginning, I knew that I wanted to bring it as far as I could. And so when I got to my third year university, I was considering doing a PhD, although I didn't know in what field, because as I said, you really need to commit. So you kind of have to have some clear ideas of at least what direction you would like to pursue research in general. And what I just did was taking a bunch of courses and then again, talking to professors and trying to understand what I liked. And I did some summer research projects that really helped me understanding what I liked and also what I didn't like. I took a 2-month research project on a topic that I ended up hating completely. And I was like, okay, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. But then by the end of my third year, I kind of had a clear idea of basically what I was interested in. And I started talking to some professors and some postgrad and some PhD students and some postdocs, asking, I like this topic, where can I do it? What can I do with it? And that's where everything started. So I got recommended a few places. I was very set in my way that I wanted to go to the States. And so I started looking up how to apply to the States. And it turns out you have to do exams to get into a PhD program in the States. So I did those over summer. So PhDs might require quite a lot of planning, because that was the summer of my third year. And then I started taking some courses specifically for getting basically some specialism in my curricula so that I could actually apply to good programs showing that I was interested in that specific topic, which is dynamical systems. And so I did kind of plan for over a year what I wanted to do and what courses I wanted to follow and what decision I wanted to make. And then I started applying. So I got given a list of names, of people to reach out to. And I looked up the universities which people were working at, and I looked up the personal pages of the supervisors, and I basically talked to other people as well, trying to get a gist of how these people were. And I think these, especially for LGBTQ plus people, it's a very important thing to do, which is, and I will focus on this, the place, the university, but also the city or town where the university is placed, plays a fundamental role in your well-being. And so understanding where you are and understanding who you're going to be working with and understanding the environment you're going to be in, both from a work perspective and a life perspective, it's fundamental. Having said that, I applied to, I think, like 6 or 7 universities in the States, and I got rejected from all of them but one. So rejection is a very common thing where you apply for PhDs, where you apply for also any jobs. Like this also works for industry, because I have had a lot of friends getting a lot of rejection when they apply for jobs in industry. This is a very transversal thing. So kind of be ready if you were thinking of doing a PhD that you might, you will probably, actually very likely that you would be rejected from certain places, and just don't put your self-worth in those applications. Like, understand that the reason why they rejected you might not have to do with you as a person. Probably it's just they either had better candidate that just like came from a university where they specialized better in what they were applying for, or they didn't have enough money to take that many students. There are always choices, those always reasons, maybe even some politics behind, like you never know. But take rejections not personally if you can. Obviously, there's always a part of you that will take it personal, but try to just bounce off of it and look for the next place to be, the next place to apply, the next thing to do. And but yeah, so I'd also have a plan B. So my plan B was actually Imperial, so that the university I was at was my safety net in a way, because it's kind of most times it's easier to get in a university you're already in. Just statistically speaking, just because you know more people, you're just more likely to get in. And also, it was easier for me to get funding as a European, because this was before Brexit. It was easier for me to get money in the UK than it was for me to get money in the States. So that also played a major role in why I chose Imperial as my safety choice. Yeah, so this is possibly the thing that I feel the strongest about, which is, as I said before, when you apply, you really need to make sure that you think you would be happy or at least comfortable with the place you're going to be living in. So brief anecdote, I got an offer from the States that was from Indiana University in the state of Indiana in the States. And I looked up the place, because being a white European, I had no clue what it was like being living there. And I looked up a few things. First thing I looked up was what is the queer scene in Bloomington, which is the town where the university is based at. And it turns out that there is one gay bar, and that's about it. There's nothing else. And I already started feeling a bit iffy about it. Then I talked to people, and it turns out that Bloomington is a very university town, so it's very open-minded. It's actually a very nice place to be. But the state of Indiana as a whole, it's not that welcoming. I mean, it depends. Some people, like, I know I have friends of mine who are queer and live in Indiana, and they're actually happy with it. I just didn't feel it was right for me. I just felt that I would have not felt very welcome there, especially because I'm quite outspoken. I don't want to go back to not being comfortable with myself. So I was looking for a place where I could actually express myself freely. And I felt like Bloomington would have given me, as a town, that possibility, but anywhere outside of it, I should have been a bit more careful, which is something I don't really want to do. And this is my personal choice, and this is something I have to live with, and this is something I'm basing my decisions on. Everyone has different standards and has different priorities, and it's very important that you decide what's important to you and what's relevant and what you want to prioritize. But doing that first research really helped me understand that, and also talking to people there also made me understand that maybe that was not the right place for me. But on the other hand, I was also talking to my potential supervisor, who was the loveliest person ever, and that really kind of convinced me to go there, just by how nice he was and by how supportive and nice. And so it was difficult for me to decide not to go in the end. And the only reason why I decided not to go was just because when I received my offer from Imperial, I had most of my life already set in the UK, and the project I was offered was also a lot more relevant to what I wanted to do. So both like science and life ended up being better in London when I did my pros and cons at the end, and so I decided to stay in London. But I was very, very. I mean, I started the visa application process to go to Indiana, so at some point I was actually set on going there. Yeah, another way to kind of understand, in my opinion at least, if a university specifically or also in industry and companies is welcoming of queer and like LGBTQ plus people is if they do have a network. So Imperial, for example, has a fairly well-known network which is called Imperial 600, which is a postgrad network, staff and postgrads. And also they have a society for undergrads. So the university is pretty involved with it and is pretty supportive to an extent with this type of initiatives, which is, in my opinion, good. I'm not saying that you need to be part of it. I'm not saying that you should join it. I'm just saying the fact that the university has the option, is giving you the option to be part of such network, it's already a good sign in terms of like how open the whole place, the whole workplace is going to be. On top of that, like you might be asking me like, okay, but like how do I understand, how do I find out what's the, if a place would is actually open-minded, because it's kind of difficult from just websites and articles. And my best recommendation is email people. Like, don't be scared, don't be afraid, just look up through people working in the department you're interested in, and probably quite likely you're going to find someone who's openly LGBTQ plus person, and just email them, just ask them. And most people will be very nice, and that's my experience. A lot of people are just very nice about it, and they'd be more than happy to chat with you or just reply to the email, and just talk to you and explain how they feel about it. Obviously, take it with a pinch of salt because it's always someone else's experience. But what the message that I really want to convey is, don't think that you can pause your life and you can make a sacrifice that lasts 3 to 5 years. Where you just decide to ignore part of your identity for the sake of like being in a good university or with a specifically good supervisor or something like that. So do take into account that your personal life is as important as the science you'll be doing. So having a good personal life also probably means also doing good science, because if your personal life, if you don't feel happy in the place you're in, your research will get affected and your results won't be at the level you want them to be. So don't think that just for good science, whatever that means, you should put your life on pause, because it's never ever worth it. So yeah, what it's like to do a PhD. So my research is very classical in the sense I'm still very much pen and paper, sitting down, staring at a blank page type of person, with my dusty books and all that fun stuff. So it gets frustrating, as you can imagine, because most of the time I'm just trying to work out something. So the way that Matt's research works specifically is you have an idea, you want to find out if a certain property is true or not. So you have like a toy model that you play with it for a bit, and then trying to prove that property for that specific model that you've either come up with or you find in the literature. And then from there, you try to generalize and generalize and generalize until you reach like a good level of generality that you're happy with, and then try to understand if that property can be used in some other contexts. And yeah, where can you go from there, basically? So on a daily basis, it might feel frustrating because it might just like feel that it's just you getting stuck all the time, and it does feel like that most of the days. But mathematics is also very social, which is kind of like something that a lot of people don't realize. But a big part of mathematics is to talk to people at conferences and in your department, in your research group, with your supervisor, with your friends, with your office mates, and really get that talking out and really get that collaboration working and going. And that feeling of working with someone who's very excited about stuff and wants to help out and wants to get involved with what you're doing, I think is one of the best feelings. One of the things that really really keeps me in academia and really make me want to going forward and create more of that network, more of this connection with those people. As a job, being in academia. So first of all, doing a PhD is a job. Like, let's this is kind of a myth that PhD can be seen as like something else. Doing a PhD is a job, so please treat it like that. I try to keep a fairly good work-life balance. I try to have like a fairly strict schedule, like a 9 to 6 type of job. Trying to take weekends off unless there's some important deadline coming up, but 99% of my weekends are off. And I treat it like that because I think we should stop using the fact that doing a PhD is a passion-driven job, and so because of that, you should be overworked and you should be always burnt out because you're doing it for a passion, so you shouldn't feel tired. That's not true. Also, mathematics is a creative job, as most jobs are nowadays anyway. So you also need rest to be creative. So really take care of yourself. I think that's the big takeaway, is take care of yourselves. Like, if you want to do a PhD, you need to make, this is also something very important, there's no one who's going to be looking out for you. Your well-being, it's up to you to make it happen. So if you're overworked, talk to your supervisor, talk to the next person in line, whoever you have above you, and tell them that you need a break. And one of the good things about PhD is how unstructured it can be sometimes, which means that sometimes you can just take breaks when other times in industry you would need to like require them and request them and wait for someone to sign them out. PhD is a lot more relaxed with that aspect, but which is a kind of like double-edged sword in the sense of sometimes you feel kind of lost because you have no structure around you, but it's all about creating it yourself and making it work for yourself. So it's very much about your own needs and understanding what you need to do and how you need to do it and what makes you happy and what and when to work for you. So yeah, this is something that takes a while. Obviously, when you start PhD, it takes always like a few good months to get to a point where you start understanding how to split up your day and how to do things and how to schedule and stuff. Another big part of doing a PhD, but this is a big part of being in academia, is teaching, which for me is very fundamental. It's something I really like doing, and it really allows you to get in touch with a lot of younger students who most of the times are interested in what you're doing or just interested, excited about your general field. And it's always lovely to be able to talk to people and convince them to pursue either a higher education or going into industry, depending on their interests. But I don't know, I really like relating to people and get them excited about something and show them that they can also reach levels or reach careers that are never considered even possible, which, for example, a PhD, a lot of people never think about it, but it's a possible career. Like, you can make it work. Yeah. And also, let's not forget that you do end up with a title at the end of your PhD. So if you want to be called doctor for the rest of your life, I think it's a pretty good deal, but that's my sale. Finally, one of the last, possibly the last slide I really want to spend time on, it's so stepping away from PhD specific onto just academia in more general. So this is some data that I've been stealing from a paper that you can see referenced at the bottom. I'm not claiming this is my stuff, but I do agree with a lot of these data. So first of all, I mean, you've seen me, I'm a white, cis, gay man. So I'm extremely privileged when it comes to being in a minority. I'm kind of at the top of the hierarchy in the community, which is really not what it should feel like. But so when you read the data on the right specifically, when people talk about being uncomfortable in the departments, I've never felt uncomfortable, but also in a way I can suppress my sexuality, so I can also be straight passing and get on with my life very easily. Whereas people who are gender non-conforming or transgender, then it's a lot harder for someone like them to be able to go on with about their lives without having certain types of discussions. And this is what I really feel about academia, is that it's an open space, it's welcoming to an extent, which is, I've I've always been very vocal about homosexuality. I've always been very vocal about representation in academia. It's something I really care about. I've been talking to professors, postdoc, PhD students, and I've never had any troubles because of it. But I'm also in London, and at the conferences I'm at, it's also very international places most of the times. But I still feel that a lot of people I talk to don't really respond. So there is still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of awareness. A lot of work has been done, which I need to applaud people that have been doing it before me, and I'm absolutely impressed with a lot of stuff that's been done. For example, there is a famous Rainbow Lanyard campaign that's been going on in British universities, which I think is lovely. So a lot of people you can see around the department wear this rainbow lanyard with the name tags on it, which kind of indicate that they are either part of the community or they're allies or they just care about the cause, which I think it gives you a visual cue to who could you be talking to in case you need to talk about some identity issues, if you want to talk to anyone inside of your workspace. But then a lot of the hierarchy, a lot of the professors tend to be white, like very heteronormative, white, older man, which see this whole like LGBTQ plus stuff kind of as an annoyance, something like it should be important because it should be your personal life and your work should be divided, which is, in my opinion, is kind of a weak argument, because academia is a very all-encompassing field to be in. So it's kind of difficult to be able to completely separate your personal life from your work life. And also, they don't separate it. Like, you will hear a lot of these people talking about their personal lives and their wives and sons and daughters and kids and whatever. But you can't do it because they're uncomfortable. I'm sorry, I just don't accept that as a reason, as an argument to why I shouldn't be able to do it. So with that regard, what I would like to say, for example, which happens in industry, and I'm very surprised that this doesn't happen as much in academia, is, for example, some compulsory seminars where everyone, and when I say everyone, I mean everyone, has to attend, and everyone gets to talk about certain identity issues or certain minority issues that still exist in academia, because now we're talking about LGBTQ plus issues, but also a lot of work needs to be done towards women in mathematics and also towards racial minorities in mathematics, which also have very little representation, which is very sad, and it's a problem that needs to be tackled, in my opinion. But anyway, yeah, so it's academia is like this is scientific academia specifically, because this is what I can talk about, but it's very forward thinking when it comes to science, but it's still kind of resistant to certain social changes that I think we should be pushing for a bit more. And yeah, in the last couple of minutes, I wanted to just share very quickly some queer literature and media, because this is something I've been looking out for myself, basically, because after finishing my high school and stuff, I realized that I never really was exposed to any non-standard literature and media, and so I wanted to learn more about my community. I do acknowledge the fact that a lot of the stuff I'm recommending is about gay men, which is what I've been reading the most about, and I'm actively trying to read more about other parts of the community, because it's not just one part, it's a lot of different people with a lot of different stories all together. So I am trying my best to reading more about other parts of the community. But for a starter, I just wanted to give a bit of some suggestions, some recommendation, if anyone was interested in exploring some queer aspect of a certain media. And yeah, I think now we're probably going to have a bit of a Q&A. I hope you have some questions. If not, I can rant more about stuff, because I can always rant about stuff. So that's great. But thank you for listening, and also thank you for coming.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Matteo. And it was really interesting because the PhD journey is new to me as well. So it's fascinating to see a bit more of it from the inside, and how sort of queer identities can have an effect on kind of the journey on the way through. So it looks like we've got a few questions come through. We're going to first pop to Imran in the chat. So he have just asked, no, sorry, he has just asked, I've just seen his pronouns. Thank you so much for that. How much change have you seen in the last 3 years in academia?
I need to point out that because of pandemic, academia has been from remote a lot of my PhD, so I haven't seen that much change directly. What I can tell you I've seen is a lot of change since I've started my undergrad. So since 2015 to now, I've seen a definite change towards people being a lot more comfortable. For example, putting out on their office doors like rainbow flags and just being open about their identities. So it's a lot easier to identify people who can become sort of like a mentor, if you want, in terms of being LGBTQ plus in the in science and in academia in general. So that's something I've noticed. That's something I'm very happy to see, and that's something I'm really glad that it's happening. But in the last 3 years specifically, I feel kind of the world froze a bit, so there's not been much progress that I've personally noticed. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone else can say something about this, but personally, that's my perspective.
Okay, great. Now I think Dave's got a question.
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. Yeah, so if you found it difficult to answer that one about the previous 3 years, then my question is going to be really, really hard, because mine is, what difference have you seen over the past 30 years? Because so my personal experience is that I failed my PhD in the early 90s, and a big part of that was because when I came out to my parents, that caused really, really quite a massive amount of personal trauma for me and for them, and that contributed to me taking quite a lot of time off and then ultimately failing the PhD. Right. So I guess, but it sounds as if there's plenty of encouragement, and society at large has got this, that there's been plenty of encouraging news over the past 30 years. But I guess it's that. So I mean, so it sounds like you're out and not hide anything about your identity at university, at work, and that's a good thing. But well, I think that's a good thing, of course. But it's kind of hard for me to get a picture of where universities are, and I'm guessing the picture. I guess the question is, what's going on? Because it's really hard to know whether imagine that I was about to start a PhD and I've made my choices about mathematics. Your area of mathematics is dull compared to what I was doing, by the way. It's a terrible area to be in. But that if I was going to make that decision, then the social aspects of what I'm going to do are going to have an impact. But it's not just inside the university, it's society in general. You talked about Indiana being maybe good in some ways, maybe bad in other ways, and it's that. And that complex decision about how the next 3-4 years of my life going to go outside of university, is that going to have an impact on my PhD? And it's that. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure I've got a question really, but there we are.
I mean, like that's something I really agree with, which is like the life outside of a PhD is difficult. Like a PhD is hard, kind of by definition, to an extent. So I really think you need to take care as much as you can with the place you're going to be living in, so the people around you and outside of your workspace. So from what to answer the question of like how the university has changed the last 30 years, I think there's been a lot of change in the sense of like there's been a lot of people being proudly out and a lot of networks being built specifically to unite queer scientists, to give a sort of community feeling that spans across universities, because that's one of the big issues, well, one of the big points of academia, especially in contemporary times, is that you will need to move around a lot. So all the stuff I've been talking about so far has been very much my experience in London, in the UK, which is obviously a very specific subset of academia. I know other places are not as open. I've been also, because now I'm looking at postdocs and jobs for after my PhD, I've been proposed to look at places in countries where I know for a fact that I wouldn't feel comfortable living in because of their homophobic laws that they have. And I think that one of the big differences that I've been able to say, no, I don't want to go there because I don't feel comfortable with my sexuality, and I don't want to live in fear basically for the next 2 years. So I think that's probably one of the biggest changes that academia has been going through in the UK, in London, in the last 30 years. It's been able to say, no, because of who I am, because of my of my identity, I don't want to do that. Obviously, it's not easy. That restricts your possibilities. That makes it a lot harder. And academia is very much about being flexible because very little money and very little opportunities, especially if you're working in like a natural science with next to no applications like I am. So I'd say to a certain level, the fact that your identity is taken seriously and your concern have been listened to, it's quite a good change. Although, unfortunately, a lot of these really comes down to your supervisor. So it's also very specific to your research group and your university. And like, that's why I stole someone else's data when I was talking about being LGBTQ+ in academia.
Is stealing data okay for PhD?
As long as you reference it. It's all about putting the reference down and acknowledge the fact that it's not yours. But that's why I always find it kind of difficult to make blanket statements on academia, because it's very much dependent on the country, and it's very much dependent on where you are and the moment you're on and the people that are there. But I feel that because of how society has been changing, there's also been some change that's been reflected inside of academia. But I do feel that in certain places and with certain people specifically, especially like some big names in certain fields, academia kind of gives you a way out of changing, because if you're a full-on professor, you kind of have the possibility of not facing any of these issues, because you're a permanent member or at a university, which basically means you can do whatever you want. So there is still that issue. There is still the issue of like generational change that needs to happen at high up levels in academia that we're all kind of waiting for. And a lot of people are pretty much rooting for that to happen as soon as possible, because we're all kind of sick of certain people around. But yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
That's great. If anyone's got any more questions, feel free to either put your hand up or to go in chat. Happy to answer any other questions. Dave, were you popping your hand up again just now?
I was, and I might steal your thunder, because I'm guessing you were going to go. So I'm going to guess that as a host, you were going to go in something like this direction, but just in case. So as BCS, as professional body, so of course your stuff is in your stuff is sort of mathematics. But is there anything that you would want to see from professional bodies? What can we do to help? Because one of the things that we have that maybe students, including PhD students, don't have is that security of tenure, effectively.
Yep.
Because as a member of BCS, as a committee member of an SG, as a recently having been a councillor of BCS, as a kind of senior volunteer inside a professional body that's allied, hopefully in both senses, to the discipline you're working in, what can we do to help?
So as I mentioned this briefly before, something I really want to see that I'm really annoyed that it's not happening right now, it's compulsory training for all members of staff. So one of the big things that I've been talking a lot about recently with people at work and friends, it's every time we do any type of minority event, which can go from Women in Maths to Pride in STEM to whatever, all the attendees are always from the minority, which is good. But a lot of the times what you end up doing is talking about issues that are affecting said minority. And the people that need to hear about these are never there. And the people who need to work on themselves to solve big part of the issue are not coming, and they also probably think that's a waste of time. So I'm really, really, really sad to see that we don't have these type of, I know there is some training that is compulsory and it happens every now and then very sporadically. But first of all, that training is not given to PhD students who, by the way, also need it. It's not just because we are younger, which also is not true, because you can do a PhD at any point in your life. So that's not even a valid point anymore. I don't understand why PhD students who are not technically members of staff, but also are members of staff, because we're working with staff, teaching and doing a lot of other stuff, other things. I don't understand why we don't get any of that. And the one that gets given to the actual members of staff, so the permanent positions and postdocs, I don't see that happen that much. I don't really see any engagement from professors specifically. So I would really, and this obviously is not something that I can ask BCS alone to be doing. This should be a collaboration between departments and different bodies.
Yeah, and that's, I guess for today, we can be sort of representative of professional bodies in general. But yeah, and from Matt's point of view, there's some overlap. But yeah, I take your point.
Yeah, so that's for me, that's like the most pressing change that I think is also easy to implement, because then there's a lot of other stuff that I would like to see happen, which is just like normalizing, talking about relationships that are non-conforming, or like not in the usual sense, whatever that really means. But that is obviously, it's a long dialogue that's needed, and it's a lot of subtle changes that need to be done and taken. So it's, yeah, I was trying to answer for with a bit of more like immediate thing that I would like to see.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, I have a question as well, and this is more just to look at sort of the positive spin of things, I guess. What have you found to be the most, I guess, the most positive experience that you've had as a as an LGBT person in doing a PhD? What has been, because we've talked a lot about the sort of implications and the influences on it, but is there any positive things you could call out on it?
So I'm very happy that I've been surrounded by people. When I was deciding for my PhD, I've been surrounded by people that I've basically been telling me a lot of these things that you said. Like a lot of the things I've said today are actually coming from some of my friends' recommendations that I've received throughout the year. I kind of collected them together. And I'm very happy that I had the strength to an extent to take decisions that have led me where I am now, because maybe this didn't come across quite through the presentation, but I'm actually really happy of my PhD and I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. And there are two big things that I'm really thankful for Imperial. The first one is, when I moved from Italy, I came out to a few friends, but being out in London, and especially at Imperial, is where I felt the most comfortable coming out to basically everyone and start living my life a lot more openly out. So that's a big thing that we'd always be thankful Imperial for. And the other thing, which is more PhD related, is because I took that being out and being vocal about things, and I've been given the opportunity to talk to people about it. So I've been invited a few times, and I've actually got invited again this year to talk to prospective students who want to do a PhD. And every time I was invited, I always spoke about why being queer can affect your decision in ways that other people might not ever consider. And that's like a good event, because also going back to the question before, a lot of the students participating in those events are not from minorities. Just like everyone who's interested in a PhD is going to be there. And I just like pointing out that for certain minority, there's also an added difficulty. So being able to talk to people and pass on the knowledge that I was very lucky to have just by chance, or the people I was around, that is something that I find very gratifying and I really enjoy. And also I've been talking to conferences with people like during socials and stuff like that about representation, and I've also received a lot of like very positive feedback from professors and postdocs. So I think there is a nice community in most places. There are still fights that needs to be taken, and there are still certain places that are a bit more difficult to be in than others. But I'd say as a general, I do like the direction that I've seen academia going towards. And I know there is a lot of work that needs to be done, but I feel like a lot of the people that I've met so far have all been very open and very 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 keen on making those fights and fighting those fights and making that change happen, basically. So yeah, that's probably big thing. The couple of big things I really appreciated from my PhD, from being openly out during my PhD time.
Yeah, well, it would make a whole different. It would make a lot of difference to your experience as a student, not having those networks in place. So that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to do a final call for questions. So if anyone's got any more, just pop them in the chat or pop your hand up. Whilst we're waiting for that, I'm just going to. For anyone who is new to BCS and is possibly interested in joining, we are the BCS Pride group, and so we're always looking to have more people as part of the group. If you are not already a member of BCS, we do actually have a BCS membership discount available. So you'll see here over my shoulder, we've got the BCS Pride codes to get 20% off your membership. And we'd love for you to come on board and be a part of our group as well. If you have any questions about BCS membership, you're always free to reach out. You can put any in the chat now. But I get the feeling we might be all done with questions. So, Matteo, have you got any sort of closing notes for us today?
First of all, if anyone's interested in doing a PhD and has more questions, please contact me. You can probably find my email address through Imperial. But yeah, I'm very happy to answer questions about both what I talked about today, and if anyone has other questions that they didn't feel comfortable sharing, please contact me. I'll be more than happy to answer them. The other point, which is the same as the one I made at the beginning, there is a full month of talks coming up, so please do come to also the next one in the next few weeks, because there is a fantastic lineup of speakers. Yeah, if you really have a passion and you really want to pursue it, do consider doing a PhD, because it can be a good time.
It sounds like it. I'm definitely thinking about it, going into my third year as a bachelor. So I'm still away yet, but
it's never too early to think about it. It takes quite a bit of planning. So, you know, I'm just putting out there.
Definitely. Okay. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Matteo. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, I think we're going to close it at that for today. Our next talk is next week on the 16th of June. So feel free to join us then. We do have some Eventbrite links on our pages, and you can see it on our BCS social media as well. Fantastic. So I hope everyone has a great day.